Imagine a football team so bold that it forced the NFL to rewrite its own rules. A team so unpredictable that even television networks had to change the way they broadcast the game. And a team so defiant that it took on the league in court and won. That team is the Raiders. The NFL has crowned many champions, but the Raiders did more than collect trophies. They reshaped the very history of professional football. From unforgettable plays etched in highlight reels, to courtroom battles that shifted league power, to moments so controversial that officials still talk about them today, the Raiders have always found a way to leave their mark. In this video, we're going to dive into 10 moments when the Raiders changed NFL history forever. Some of these events are legendary, like Willie Brown's Super Bowl interception return. Others are less known, but just as powerful, like the night of the Heidi game, when an entire country learned never to turn away from a Raiders comeback. Stick with us until the end, because each moment builds on the last, showing how the Raiders became more than a team. They became a force that shaped the game itself. Welcome to History of Raiders, where we bring you untold stories and the unforgettable legacy of Raider Nation. If you're a true football fan, or just someone who loves seeing how one team can shake up an entire league, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join us for more deep dives into Raiders history. 10. The Raiders' legacy. From Oakland to LA to Vegas. The Raiders have always been a team on the move, and every move carried more weight than just a change of stadium. When the Raiders left Oakland in Los Angeles in 1982, it was more than relocation. It was a statement. Owner Al Davis had fought the league and won, proving that the Raiders would never be controlled by anyone but themselves. In Los Angeles, the team embraced the city's culture, mixing silver and black with Hollywood style and building one of the fiercest fan bases in sports. But the story didn't end there. In 1995, the Raiders returned to Oakland, rekindling old loyalties. Raider Nation filled the Coliseum with the same grit and edge that had made Oakland famous in the 1970s. For fans, it wasn't just football. It was family, rebellion, and identity. The Raiders symbolized the underdog spirit, the idea that loyalty runs deeper than the score on the board. Then came 2020, when the Raiders shocked the league by moving once again, this time to Las Vegas. It was a bold step into the future. Allegiant Stadium, known as the Death Star, became a modern fortress for Raider Nation. The move reshaped NFL economics, opening the door for football in one of the most entertainment-driven cities in the world. Amid these changes, one figure still lingers in the Raiders' mystique: Bo Jackson. His career with the Raiders was short, cut down by injury, but his impact was legendary. A two-sport superstar with rare power and speed, Jackson became the ultimate what if in NFL history. His time in silver and black only added to the aura of a franchise that has always thrived on mystery, defiance, and unforgettable legends. 9. The Raiders' criminal element identity. In the mid-1970s, the Raiders built a reputation as one of the toughest and most physical teams in the NFL. No moment captured that image more than a collision between Raiders safety George Atkinson and Steelers wide receiver Lynn Swann. In a heated matchup, Atkinson delivered a fierce hit that left Swann shaken. It was the kind of play that defined the Raiders' defense: hard, punishing, and unapologetic. But the story didn't end on the field. After the game, Steelers head coach Chuck Noll made headlines when he accused the Raiders of being a criminal element in football. It was an insult that went beyond typical trash talk. Coming from a respected coach, it branded the Raiders not just as tough opponents, but villains of the league. Atkinson didn't take the accusation lightly. He filed a slander lawsuit against Noll, arguing that the remark damaged his reputation and painted him as something more than just a hard-hitting player. The case itself drew national attention, and it highlighted the growing tension between the Raiders and the rest of the NFL. Instead of backing down, the Raiders leaned into the image. Under Al Davis, they embraced being the outsiders, the rebels of football. They wore the label like a badge of honor, turning criminal element into part of their mystique. For fans, it only deepened the Raiders' identity as the team that didn't care about being liked. They wanted to be feared. 8. The Raiders and the Tuck Rule Game, 2001. Snow was falling hard in Foxborough on January 19, 2002. The Raiders were locked in a playoff battle with the New England Patriots. Every yard was a fight, and the weather made the game look more like survival than football. Late in the fourth quarter, with the Raiders leading, the Patriots' young quarterback Tom Brady dropped back to pass. Then came the hit. Charles Woodson, the Raiders' star cornerback, blitzed off the edge and crushed Brady. The ball came loose. The Raiders pounced on it. For a moment, it looked like the game was over. Oakland had forced the turnover they needed to advance. Players on the sideline were already celebrating, and fans at home were sure they had just seen the Patriots' season end. But the officials huddled, and everything changed. Referees announced that Brady's arm had been moving forward, even though it was clear he was pulling the ball back in. They invoked an obscure rule, little known to fans and even many players, the tuck rule. According to it, if a quarterback begins a passing motion and then tucks the ball back toward his body, any fumble is considered an incomplete pass. The call stunned the Raiders. The Patriots kept the ball, drove down the field, and tied the game with a field goal. In overtime, Adam Vinatieri kicked another through the snow, sending New England forward and leaving Oakland in disbelief. The tuck rule became one of the most controversial calls in NFL history. Raiders fans never forgot that night, when victory was taken away not by an opponent's play, but by a rule that seemed almost designed to deny them. 7. The Raiders moved to Los Angeles and Al Davis's lawsuit. By the early 1980s, the Raiders were one of the NFL's most feared teams, but their home in Oakland was becoming a problem. The stadium was outdated, and Al Davis believed the team needed a bigger stage. Los Angeles, with its millions of residents and national spotlight, looked like the perfect answer. Davis pushed hard to move the Raiders to LA, but the NFL had other ideas. The league owners voted against the move, blocking the relocation. For most owners, that would have been the end of the story. But Al Davis was not like most owners. Davis decided to fight back. In 1980, he filed a lawsuit against the NFL, claiming the league had no right to stop his team from moving. The case went to trial, and the battle was fierce. The NFL argued it had the power to control where teams played to protect balance and tradition. Davis countered that the Raiders were his business, and he had the right to seek better opportunities. After a long courtroom fight, Davis won. In 1982, a federal jury ruled in his favor, clearing the way for the Raiders to pack up and head to Los Angeles. The decision sent shockwaves through the league. For the first time, an owner had successfully challenged the NFL's authority and come out on top. The Raiders' move not only gave Los Angeles its own team, but also set a new legal precedent. From that point on, every relocation battle in the NFL would be shaped by the fight Al Davis had started. The Raiders had proven that even the league itself could be beaten, and Davis had cemented his reputation as one of the most defiant figures in sports history. 6. The Raiders' Ghost to the Post, 1977. The year was 1977, and the Raiders found themselves locked in a playoff battle against the Baltimore Colts. What unfolded that day would become one of the most dramatic games in NFL history and one of the most unforgettable chapters in Raiders lore. It was Christmas Eve. The game had already been a back-and-forth fight, with neither team willing to give an inch. By the fourth quarter, the tension in Memorial Stadium was almost unbearable. With just minutes left, the Raiders were trailing. Everyone knew they needed something special, something bold. That's when Ken Stabler, the cool and fearless Raiders quarterback, dropped back to pass. He spotted tight end Dave Casper sprinting downfield. Casper was known for his size, his hands, and his knack for big plays. As Stabler released the ball, fans held their breath. The pass sailed high, arching across the night sky.
Casper twisted his body, leapt, and somehow hauled it in over defenders. The play set up the tying score. It wasn't just a catch. It was a moment so remarkable that it earned its own name. Ghost to the post. The ghost was Casper, and the post was the deep route he ran straight towards the goalposts. But the drama didn't end there. The game pushed into overtime, then into double overtime, the third longest game in NFL history at the time. Casper once again delivered, catching the winning touchdown in the end zone to send the Raiders forward in the playoffs. That night, the Raiders showed not only their skill, but their willpower. In a marathon of endurance and nerve, they proved they could rise in the biggest moments, and the legend of Ghost to the Post was born. 5. The Raiders' Super Bowl XVIII blowout, 1983 season. The year was 1983, and the Raiders had something to prove. They had already built their reputation as one of the toughest franchises in football, but Super Bowl XVIII gave them the chance to stamp their authority on the league. Facing the heavily favored Washington Redskins, a team loaded with talent and defending champions, the Raiders entered the game as underdogs. What happened next shocked the NFL. From the opening plays, the Raiders controlled the tempo. Their defense set the tone, forcing Washington into mistakes and shutting down their usually powerful offense. By halftime, the scoreboard already told the story. Raiders 21, Redskins 3. The game was slipping away, and the Raiders weren't about to let up. Then came the moment that still plays in highlight reels today. Marcus Allen, young, fast, and fearless, took the handoff late in the third quarter. What looked like a broken play turned into pure magic. Allen reversed direction, cutting across the field, slipping through defenders, and accelerating into open space. He sprinted 74 yards to the end zone, weaving past Washington players as if they weren't even there. The run wasn't just a touchdown. It was a statement. Allen finished the night with 191 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and the Super Bowl MVP award. The Raiders crushed Washington 38-9, delivering one of the most lopsided victories in championship history. Fans watching that night witnessed a performance that proved the Raiders were more than just tough. They were unstoppable when everything clicked. For many, that game remains the high point of the franchise's dominance, a reminder that the Raiders could rise to the biggest stage and not only win, but completely overwhelm a champion.
4. The Raiders' first Super Bowl and Willie Brown's Pick 6, 1976 season. By the mid-1970s, the Raiders had built a reputation as a tough, relentless team. But critics still pointed to one glaring fact. Despite years of playoff appearances, the Raiders had never won the big one. That changed with the 1976 season. The Raiders stormed through the regular season with a 13-1 record, powered by quarterback Ken Stabler, the ground attack of Mark Van Agen, and a defense that punished anyone in its way. Their journey to Super Bowl XI was filled with determination. But the challenge waiting in Pasadena was the Minnesota Vikings, an experienced team making its 4th Super Bowl appearance. From the opening kickoff, the Raiders dictated the tempo. Stabler controlled the offense with precision, and Fred Biletnikoff kept finding holes in the Vikings' defense. But it wasn't just the offense that defined the game. It was the Raiders' defense that delivered the iconic moment. In the 4th quarter, with the game slipping away from Minnesota, quarterback Fran Tarkenton dropped back and fired to the left side. Willie Brown, the Raiders' veteran cornerback, read the play perfectly. He stepped in front of the pass, snatched the ball, and sprinted 75 yards untouched to the end zone. As he ran, the camera zoomed in on Brown's determined face, a moment etched forever in Super Bowl history. That interception didn't just seal the win. It symbolized everything the Raiders stood for: toughness, confidence, and a flair for the dramatic. The final score was 32-14, and at last, the Raiders were world champions. The victory erased years of frustration and established the Silver and Black as a true NFL powerhouse. 3. The Raiders' Sea of Hands, 1974. The year was 1974. The Miami Dolphins were chasing their 3rd straight Super Bowl appearance, and the Raiders stood in their way. It was the AFC Divisional Playoff, a clash between 2 of the most physical teams in football.
Every snap was a battle, every yard earned through sweat and pain. With just seconds left on the clock, the Raiders trailed 26-21. The game seemed to belong to Miami. The Dolphins had been the league's powerhouse, and now they were moments away from advancing yet again. But the Raiders were not a team that surrendered quietly. Quarterback Ken Stabler dropped back for one final shot. The Dolphins' pass rush collapsed around him. Stabler was nearly swallowed by defenders when he made a desperate throw into the end zone. Waiting there was running back Clarence Davis, a man not known for spectacular catches. What happened next became legend. Surrounded by Miami defenders, Davis reached through a crowd of arms, what looked like a literal sea of hands. Somehow, against all odds, he pulled the ball in. Touchdown Raiders! The Oakland Coliseum erupted, and the Dolphins' dynasty dream ended right there on the field. The play was instantly christened the Sea of Hands. It wasn't just a touchdown, it was a symbol. It showed the grit, the determination, and the belief that the Raiders carried onto the field every Sunday. No lead was safe, no game ever truly over. That single moment burned the Raiders' reputation into NFL history. They were the team that never quit, no matter how impossible the situation looked.
2. The Raiders and the Heidi Game, 1968. It was November 17, 1968. The Oakland Raiders were facing the New York Jets in what was already a hard-fought battle. With just over a minute left, the Jets were clinging to a slim lead. Viewers across the country sat glued to their televisions, waiting to see if the Raiders could mount one more miracle. And then, without warning, the broadcast vanished. NBC cut away from the game to air the scheduled movie Heidi, a children's film about a young Swiss girl in the Alps. To the millions watching, the football game was gone. But on the field, the story was far from over. In those final 65 seconds, the Raiders did what the Raiders so often did, stunned the football world. They scored 2 touchdowns in a matter of moments, turning what looked like a defeat into an astonishing victory. But almost no one at home saw it. Phones at NBC's headquarters began to ring off the hook. Fans were furious. The network was overwhelmed. And the outrage spilled across newspapers the next morning. What had happened on live television that night went far beyond one regular season game. The Heidi Game, as it quickly became known, exposed the power of the NFL to hold an audience and the disaster of cutting away before the final whistle. The backlash was so strong that broadcasters and the league changed policy forever. From that point forward, no network would leave an NFL game until it was over, no matter what was scheduled next. The Raiders' comeback wasn't just another dramatic finish, it was the spark that forced the television industry to rewrite the rules of sports broadcasting. 1. The Raiders' rise under Al Davis. The Raiders' story truly changed course in 1963. Before that year, the franchise was struggling. They were a small-market AFL team with little identity, bouncing between coaches and searching for success. Then came Al Davis, a fiery young coach and general manager with a vision that would transform everything. Davis brought energy, discipline, and a bold new strategy. He believed in a vertical passing game, stretching the field with long, daring throws. It was a style that matched his personality, aggressive, fearless, and unrelenting. The Raiders went from a team that other clubs overlooked to one that demanded respect almost overnight. Under Al Davis, the Raiders quickly developed a culture unlike any other in football. He introduced the phrase, "commitment to excellence," a motto that would define the organization for decades. Players were expected to push themselves beyond the ordinary, to fight for every inch, and to never settle for mediocrity. That attitude became contagious, not just for the players, but for the fans who proudly called themselves part of Raider Nation. By the mid-1960s, the Raiders had become a powerhouse in the American Football League. They were no longer the league's afterthought, they were its headline act. Davis's leadership style also set him apart. He wasn't afraid to challenge other owners, question the league's direction, or make controversial moves if he thought they would benefit the team. When the AFL merged with the NFL in 1970, many wondered how the Raiders would fare against the more established franchises. The answer came quickly. The Raiders didn't just survive the merger, they thrived. Their toughness, swagger, and relentless style carried over, making them one of the most feared and respected teams in the new NFL landscape.
When you look back at the history of the Raiders, one thing becomes clear. This franchise was never content to simply play by the rules. They pushed boundaries, forced change, and left their fingerprints on nearly every corner of the NFL. From unforgettable plays like the Sea of Hands and Ghost to the Post, to game-changing controversies like the Heidi game and the Tuck Rule, the Raiders proved time and again that their story is inseparable from the league's own evolution. They weren't just a team chasing victories, they were challengers of authority. They were innovators who brought speed, swagger, and spectacle to the field. And when the NFL tried to hold them back, they fought in the courtroom and reshaped the very structure of the league. Every relocation, from Oakland to Los Angeles, back to Oakland, and finally to Las Vegas, reminded fans that the Raiders weren't just following the game's path, they were carving out their own. The Raiders' legacy goes far beyond wins and losses. It's a story of rebellion, toughness, and fearless innovation. The silver and black became more than colors. They became symbols of pride for Raider Nation and warning signs for anyone lining up on the other side of the ball. Without the Raiders, the NFL today would look very different. So as we close this chapter, remember this. The Raiders didn't just play football, they forced the game to evolve around them. Their moments of triumph, their controversies, and their relentless spirit have guaranteed their place in history. Love them or hate them, the Raiders didn't just play the game, they changed it forever. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Raiders history, make sure to like this video and subscribe to History of Raiders for more untold stories, iconic moments, and the legacy of Raider Nation.